The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL. You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast.
I want to go and start on the defensive side of the ball this time around. The Giants taking Abdul Carter, not a surprise. I think a lot of us predicted that would be the way to go. But I think a big question here is did they get another edge rusher who kind of is similar to what they already have? And if not, how can they get all three of them, Carter, Thibodeau, and Burns, on the field at the same time?
Yeah, I think that's obviously, you want good pass rushers and you don't care as long as you got multiples because you want to come at quarterbacks in waves. As you well know, there are times in ball games where defensively you have to be able to close out games, especially when you're going up against some of these top quarterbacks in the league. You can have a lead, but if you give the ball back to a Patrick Mahomes or if you give it back to a Joe Burrow with 4 minutes to go, they are so prone to just carve you up in those final 4 minutes and go right down the field to put more points on the board. But now when you have a pass rush of multiple guys that can get it, what that does is usually say Brian Burns may draw a double team. But now you have an Abdul Carter, you have a Kayvon Thibodeau, a guy who you can't put two guys on him, and they've got to be able to win one-on-one. Sexy Dex in the middle, he's going to take up two, right? And so if you can get one of those other edge defenders, and it might vary from week to week who that guy is, but one of those other guys is getting double teamed, then the other two should get free. And if you don't double team a Brian Burns, I think his sack total goes up. I think Abdul Carter, you'll probably see him get better second half of the year than maybe first year. Hopefully he gets off to a fast start, but when you have as many pass rushers as they do, I think with the presence of a Dexter Lawrence, in the middle, then now I think you're really got something special up front on that defensive line.
You look at Abdul Carter's skill set. For the first couple of years, he played off-ball linebacker or inside linebacker. They moved him outside. If you were to come up with a really creative way to utilize his skill set based on, that experience, is he best off as a spy, do you think? Is he better in coverage? I mean, how do you envision him maybe, putting that background to good use?
Well, certainly he's better. Just go get the quarterback. You remember when Michael Parsons came out? Michael was a similar player. Michael was kind of an off-ball linebacker. The Cowboys got in trouble and they needed some help getting pressure on the quarterback. He literally went to the defensive coordinator and said, I'll do it. He was the guy that raised his hand. And a lot of teams, that's why you saw him going in the middle portion a little later in that first round. A lot of people didn't know he was that good of a pass rusher. It wasn't something he did a whole lot of during his college career. Now, Abdul Carter has done more pass rushing, but he could also play as an off-ball backer. I love it when you have a good pass rusher who you're playing as an off-ball linebacker. You have Dexter Lawrence over the center or as a defensive tackle, and then you set the edges with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. And now when you can put someone like Abdul Carter and start mugging him in the A gap, in other words, pretending he's going to come up the middle, now he's dropping in coverage. Act like he's going to drop in coverage. Now he's blitzing that A gap. That's when you're really playing with house money. You're sending more athletic, talented pass rushers than what the five guys up front could block. You're going to have your hands full, as you well know, with Dexter Lawrence. But these other guys, they are a handful in a different kind of way because of the speed and athleticism that they provide to the pass rush. So I would move Abdul Carter around a lot. I'd keep Burns, and I would definitely keep Thibodeau on the edges. And that way you have pass rush up the middle. You have You set the edges with two really good pass rushers, and then you can use Abdul Carter as the wild card and kind of play around with him a lot and really confuse the protection schemes.
Solomon, when you look at what the Giants did in the offseason, they really put a lot of resources towards the defensive side of the ball, despite the fact that the offense was the problem, I thought, more so last year. Yeah. Were you surprised with that? Do you agree with the moves that they make? And do you think this defense is better?
No, I think the defense is much better. And I like that. I like they didn't go chasing it. They allowed the draft to come to them. And they end up getting, first round pick. You take a defensive player, one of the best players. It was unquestioned that Abdul Carter was one of the best 3 players that you could get on the draft board. Later, they get Darius Alexander from Toledo, defensive tackle. You can always use another interior guy. And to me, whenever you get good pressure up the middle as pass rush, now you're playing with house money, because I think they're going to be good coming off the edge. If they can generate pressure and push the pocket up the middle, this will be one of the most unstoppable sort of defensive fronts from a pass rush perspective that I think we can find in the league. I think they're very talented. I think they're very diverse. You and I both know they got to get better on the back end in terms of the passing game. But, hey, playing the run should be much improved over last year. Getting to the quarterback, providing more pressure makes your secondary better. I like the moves they made in this draft. And you haven't even let me talk about Cam Scatterboo, who was one of my best running backs in this year's draft class. In fact, he was my favorite outside of Ashton Jeanty and Amarion Hampton. He was my most favorite player. When I saw the Giants got him, I'm thinking, bam, you just hit one out of the park.
We will talk about Cam Scatterboo, I promise. But before we do, I want to ask you one more question about the Giants defense. You mentioned the back end, the defensive secondary. Yeah. One half of that group has been revamped. They brought in Paulson Adebo at cornerback. Yeah. They brought in Javon Holland at safety. Still a relatively young group, but, do you feel that the Giants are at a point now where, yeah, that group is young, but they've got a little bit more experience, but the front 7, putting the emphasis there is going to help that group?
It should. We have a saying in the secondary, pressure leads to picks, right? If you get pressure on the quarterback, like I think the Giants are going to be able to do, you should get your hands on a lot of balls. Now, defensive backs got to catch them. I would be working with this group to really improve that. There's a lot of things you can do to help with your secondary to be able to find the ball and possess the ball, because dropped interceptions are almost like a drop touchdown pass. You cannot afford to give these quarterbacks a second chance at you when you had the ball in the hand and then you drop it and now it's 3rd and long, as opposed to you having the ball at 1st and 10. I love Tyler Nubin in the secondary. He's a guy that I think is just getting better with time. Deonte Banks, and you and I both know, he's got to be the guy to really start to come on. He's got to play better than he did last year. He's got to embrace tackling. He's got to embrace staying on the field. You can't take one of your best players off the field, but he's got to play like he's one of the best players. And you're right. They added some players in free agency that I love Javon Holland. I don't know why the Dolphins let him go, but one man's trash is another man's treasure. This guy can make big plays. He can play the run. He's a good cover safety, but he's a thumper. He's going to give you more physicality in your secondary. And I think paired with Tyler Nubin, they have a chance to be something very special as a safety tandem.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and you place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking your favorites or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. There's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You could use that $5 bet on the Knicks, who are minus 144 to win the Eastern Final. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
What is it the Raiders will have to do to be able to maximize Ashton Jeanty's talents his rookie year.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast.
I want to get into the conversation of not if the Raiders are going to maximize Ashton Jeanty's talents his rookie year, but why and how will they be able to do that? And why did this conversation even resurface? I was floating around on social media on Tuesday preparing for my radio show on Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, and I came across something from Fox Sports 1, FS1, First Thing First. Now, let me tell you, I'm not a First Thing First guy, not even an FS1 guy, right? I really don't have time to watch a whole lot of these different shows. I'm usually busy preparing for a show, which is a blessing. But I saw First Thing First, Nick Wright's on it, Cruz Broussard's on it, but also former NFL offensive lineman Jeff Schwartz. And they were talking about the Raiders. Nick Wright, who's a Chiefs fan, was like, I think they're going to be good. They might even be a playoff team, and it hurts me to say that because I'm a Chiefs fan. Chris Broussard thinks that, they'll still be third or fourth in the AFC West because the division's tough. That's, there's no slight to those guys with saying that because there's obviously a lot of questions that are going to be had this year. But then Jeff Schwartz brings up the Raiders and the way that the team is built and Ashton Jeanty, and that there's certain teams that are built to maximize the talents of a Saquon Barkley, of a Derrick Henry, of a Christian McCaffrey, of a Josh Jacobs. And the Raiders, well, they're not one. Here's Jeff Schwartz.
The running back acquisitions that have worked most recently in the NFL, they have one thing in common. The offense is complete, and they add the running back into the offense. Look at Philadelphia. Look at the 49ers. Look at what the Lions have done in the draft.
Baltimore.
This is Baltimore with Henry. This is not the case. So if they don't add to offensive line, to wide receiver, I think Jeanty's really good. I do like the Chip Kelly offensive coordinator pairing with the run game. That's what he does the best. Like, that's just going to be a fun run game they're going to have in Vegas. But we have not seen a running back added to a roster like this and had success like they want early in his career.
So there you go. You heard what Schwartz had to say. Again, all respect to him and the rest of the cast there on First Thing First, talking about the Raiders. I love it that they're talking about the Raiders, and I try to bring anything to the table that I find. A lot of times lately it's been really good, but I'm not just looking for rainbows, puppy dogs, Girl Scout cookies, and all that good stuff, right? I'm not looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I'm looking for whatever because I want to make sure that you're always aware of what's being said. So there he's talking about they're not going to get the most out of Jeanty that they want because they're not built like the Eagles or the 49ers or the Baltimore Ravens or teams like that. And I'll say where that's been a conversation that we've had, and that was a question that I threw out there well before the Raiders ever drafted Ashton Jeanty, and we had our discussions about it. One, and it's funny, I asked John McClain about it when he was a guest on my radio show on Tuesday afternoon. He said, first of all, Q, he's so talented that he's going to make the team that much better. He's going to put them in those type of conversations. He said, it's not like they had some stellar offensive line at Boise State. How many of those guys got drafted? Right. And so that was a great point by John McClain. And, well, he's the great John McClain. We call him the general for a reason. Right. And so that was one element. But also, first of all, Pete Carroll and the running backs that he's had throughout the course of his career, going back to college, the NFL. Obviously, we think of Marshawn Lynch, but think about what he did with the running game at USC. Lendale White, Reggie Bush. Yeah, a couple of pretty good running backs. Right. I mean, he's always had a really good run game and knows how to use it to the point where it's something that he wants to lean heavily on. Right. And then you bring in the offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, who had 2,000-yard rushers last year at Ohio State. And I get it. This is the NFL. It's different than college ranks. We understand that. We know that it's going to be tougher. You're getting the best of the best each and every week. There's no doubt about that. But Chip Kelly, for his offense to go, what does he need? A running game. Right. When he became a head coach in Philadelphia, he was using the running game. Right. It was a little, just not really conventional, the running style. And of course, he had the super fast up tempo offense, which he's obviously evolved from that. So I don't expect to see that. But just with his creativity, that's going to help. Right. Chip Kelly is not Luke Getsy. Chip Kelly is not some of the questionable offensive coordinators that the Raiders have had over the past. So, Chip Kelly is just licking his lips thinking, okay, I got an opportunity to coach up this guy, Ashton Jeanty. Now, one question about Chip Kelly and him coaching up Ashton Jeanty that's brought to my attention and has been a conversation piece is him changing Ashton Jeanty's rushing style, right? The way that he ran at Boise State, he was basically standing straight up and down like Le'Veon Bell did for many years, right? And was very successful with that. So he wants him to be in more of a traditional running back stance. And so Ashton has said that he's going to do that at least for now. and he's going to try to prove who he is, earn his voice, and then maybe push back a little bit. But right now, as you've seen videos floating around social media from OTAs and rookie minicamp, that he's switched up his style. What I like about that is they're doing it now. So if he's comfortable with that moving forward, cool. They can go with that, and that could be how it is. If not, if they don't feel like they're going to be able to maximize his talent, hey, you know what? Just let the young man do what the young man does. Right? I'm actually going to have Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday used to be a former running back in the league. He was very adamant about not changing Ashton Jeanty's style. He's actually going to be on my radio show as well today, coming up at 3:30 Pacific time. So I'm looking forward to that. Going to have a star-studded affair, right? Ashton Jeanty's trainer at 2:30, Ari Mayrov at 3, and then the former running back Doc Holliday on the show as well. So a lot of good stuff coming up on my radio show. But that's a whole nother conversation. Just a little bit of preview. So we'll see how that switch happens, and if they stick with that or not. If they stick with it, clearly they feel good about it moving forward and he feels comfortable with it. But if not, I'm sure they'll have time to switch back, which is good that they're doing it now as opposed to waiting until the preseason. Also, what I think is going to help maximize Ashton Jeanty's ability is the quarterback. They don't have questionable quarterback play now. They've got a guy in Geno Smith who threw for over 4,000 yards a year ago. So he's a guy that can stretch the field. He's a guy that's very accurate. He's a guy that has an opportunity to win games with his arm. So now you can't just load up the box and say, yeah, I dare you to throw the ball. I dare you. Like when the Raiders had Gardner Minshew, nobody worried about Gardner Minshew, right? They could load up the box and say, yeah, okay, good luck. When they had Jimmy G, nobody worried about Jimmy G. They could load the box and say, yeah, okay, good luck, Josh Jacobs. Try to run against that. And it was hard for him to do that, right? Because they didn't have a threat at the quarterback position. Now they do. And they have a guy like Brock Bowers. They have a guy like Jacoby Myers. They have Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton Jr. who can stretch the field. They've got Big Mike. They've got weapons to throw the ball too. But most importantly, they have Geno Smith, who's a very accurate quarterback. And if he wants to, he could put the ball between his arms, tuck the ball and run as well, if he has to. But he shouldn't have to do that as often, but he's still a threat. So Geno Smith is going to be a big help. Players also on the team know how good Ashton Jeanty could be if they do their jobs. If they do their jobs. Have you ever been in a situation where you're around someone that's really good at what they do? And you're like, man, I got to really I got to step my game up to make sure that this guy is maximized and this guy doesn't look at me like, hey, man, you're the weak link, right? I mean, when I saw Jackson Powers-Johnson greet Ashton Jeanty on that social media piece that the Raiders put out when he got to the facility for the first time, he said, hey, Jackson, I'm your center. I look forward to blocking for you. Like, that already let it be known how excited he is. Well, that's gonna have that same feeling around the rest of the team. If we get this guy rolling, how good could we be, right? That's another factor why I believe that they're going to maximize his ability. But finally, and probably most importantly, is him, Ashton Jeanty, his work ethic, his want to, his ability to be great, right? The way that he's not settling, the way he's training, the way he's working his tail off, right? What he's willing to do to be great. I mean, even to the fact of, okay, I'll change up my style rushing, because the coach wants me to do that. Like his willingness to soak everything up, his wanting to be great. Similar to Max Crosby. Remember when Max was drafted as a 4th round pick and he had to fight and scratch and claw just to make the roster, to the point where in a preseason game he breaks his hand and he puts a club on it and gets back out there? Now, Ashton Jeanty's not concerned about not making the team, but he knows the expectations now of being in the NFL, being drafted in the top 10, being the guy that's expected to, carry a big, heavy load. And you know what? He's there for it, right? He's got the discipline from his father in the military background, right? They moved around, and he's been A1 since day one, no matter where he's at. Also, and I thought this was intriguing, and I said his trainer, Ronnie Braxton, he's actually going to be on my radio show this afternoon. He's from RealSuperiorAthletics.com. He's a trainer out of Texas. I don't know if you've seen those videos where Ashton, quickly after being drafted by the Raiders, was out there training in the rain, training barefoot against the elements. And, well, he actually was asked about him, Ronnie Braxton. He was asked about Ronnie Braxton when he was drafted and what he's helped bring to the table. But I thought that the breakdown and what Ronnie had to say about what they do, their methods, the way that they train, and why they train the way that they do, including having them train in the rain with barefooted, what that all was all about. I thought that was great, and is going to also help with with Ashton Jeanty being the very best version of himself his rookie year. Check it out.
You have to understand how not to make mistakes. And when you're working on balance drills on a BOSU ball or you're catching footballs, working on peripheral vision, working on proprioception, working on strength, working on speed, working on skill. All of those things become the intangible of make the athlete the athlete. So we try to take a holistic approach on everything we're doing, but sometimes you do hone in on things like, backhand catching, peripheral rotation. So those are the things that I try to increase with every rookie is increase the eyes. Talk about what do you see, talk about what you feel, talk about how you see, right? Because the eyes is the gateway to the heart. If the eyes see perfect, everything see perfect. It's easy to separate the real from the fake. It's easy to separate the real from the fake. And I done seen fake Super Bowl champions. I done seen fake ones. So when it come time to when you talk about training in the rain and the mindset of the game, like we flip a switch. And in the shield, you protected. Out here when you preparing to be inside the shield, it ain't no protection. So that's where when you see us training in the rain and it's 40 degrees and it's time to prepare your mind to go into Green Bay, to go into Seattle, to go into Pittsburgh, to go into Cleveland when the elements are not working in your favor. You feel me? And when you look at these facilities, as beautiful and nice as it is, right, you feel me? Don't get it twisted. Like for 1 second, like we can flip a switch on you real quick. I feel like Ashton will walk right in and win the Rookie of the Year award. The work still got to be done. It's got to be put in.
I thought that was great, right? And I love how he said, I've seen a lot of fake Super Bowl champions, right? And you hear what Ronnie had to say at the end, that he believes that Ashton Jeanty is going to be the Rookie of the Year, the Offensive Rookie of the Year for the Raiders. Now, obviously, he's got to stay healthy, right? Everything's out the door if he's not healthy his rookie year. But, from all understanding and what we could talk about at this stage of the game is the expectations of him being healthy. And, he's a guy that has trained him, understands what he's all about, and I love the fact that he's talking about the elements, right? I mean, why he's training in the elements that he is because in the NFL, nothing is perfect. It's not always going to be indoors in like 70 degrees, perfect weather, perfect, turf, grass, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you're going to have to deal with adversity. And so not only are they training the body to deal with adversity, but they're training the mind to deal with adversity. So if he goes in there with that proper mindset, I think sky is the limit for Ashton Jeanty. So I know that there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be a lot of people that believe that the Raiders aren't going to be able to maximize his talent because they're not on the same page as the Eagles, as the Ravens, as the Packers, as the 49ers, when they were maximizing their running backs, even as late as last year when Saquon goes for over 2,000 yards. But I will say for all those reasons that I gave, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Geno Smith, the players knowing what they can expect from Ashton Jeanty on the team if they do their job, and more importantly, him, is the reason why his talents will be maximized his rookie year with the silver and black.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Joe Thuney's contract extension was the last domino to fall.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast.
I want to check in on where the Bears are with the team building strategy, because I think we're seeing Ryan Poles now transition from, hey, we've always got our eyes on the future and keeping some future flexibility, to now where that future flexibility is not gone, but is a lot lower. They're a lot more locked into what they are right now as a team. And this has got to be the core group of players that ascends to everything they want to achieve. Because from here, the major moves are pretty much out of the picture here without really leveraging some of your long-term future assets here. So I want to take a look at the concept of kind of why the Bears are stuck with living and dying with the guys they have now, and look ahead to how little will change in the next year or two from here, just with the contracts that the Bears have locked in right now, and then explore some of the wild cards here that say, are they good enough or are they not? And who are going to be the most important players that have to step up and have to be good. And I think there's some real parallels here to what Ryan Pace was doing when he tried to turn around the Bears with Matt Nagy early on and had some early success, and then it can be harder to sustain it when you're not building the team as much for the long term and focusing a little bit more on the short term and getting locked into the guys. If you're locked into the right guys, that's great. If you're locked into the wrong guys, well, then that's when you run into problems. And that's kind of right at the inflection point that the Bears are at right now, because you've got Thuney locked in for the next few seasons. You've got Drew Dahlman locked in for the next few seasons. You've got Jonah Jackson locked in for the next few seasons. Darnell Wright locked in. Colston Loveland, Caleb Williams, Cole Kmet still under contract for a while. DJ Moore still under contract for a while. Rome Odunze, Luther Burden. You're not seeing, outside of the running back position, we'll talk about that, you're not really going to see much change along this Bears offense. The left tackle position is in this conversation as well. But for the most part, this core offense is locked in to who your players are going to be. And when you think about it on defense, it's a lot of the same thing. Your defensive line, Sweat's locked in. Dio Dangbo's locked in. Grady Jarrett's on a 3-year deal. Jervon Dexter's got a bunch of his rookie contract. And Shamar Turner and Zach Pickens, right? Linebackers, Edwards and Edmonds are still under contract for a couple of seasons. Your cornerbacks, Jalen Johnson's got the long-term deal. Now Kyler Gordon's got the long-term deal. Stevenson and Smith and the guys on the rookie contracts are locked in. It's kind of safety, running back, and left tackle are the only spots that could change, and left tackle specifically, you've got Ozzie Trapillo and Karana Magashi, so presumably after this season, you're kind of locked in with who your left tackles are going to be for the long-term future. So really, a lot of this team is locked in, and you see that reflected in the Bears' finances, that we've gotten used to the last couple of off seasons that we get to free agency and the Bears have 40, 50, 60, 70, $80 million in salary cap space to go out and make some big moves. But right now, today, I think this is even before you put in the Joe Thuney contract extension numbers. The Bears have about $15, $16 million in cap space for next year, next offseason, including the free agents that they're going to have. The Bears will not have very much built-in cap space to start next offseason. They could create more cap space by releasing expensive players or trading players with bigger contracts, but they're not going to have a bunch of money next year to go out and sign a bunch of big-name free agents like Drew Dahlman and Joe Thuney and Dio Dangbo to these big contracts. Next year's free agency is just by nature of the finances going to have to be a lot smaller and lower key. Now, there's still some moves that will need to be made if you look ahead, and we don't need to spend a bunch of time going through every decision for next offseason, but this is for the point of giving a sense of how little may actually change. This year, the Bears got a whole new O-line, new receiver, new tight end, new defensive lineman. The Bears changed a bunch of stuff this offseason. Next year, your two safeties are kind of the big one. Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker are supposed to be free agents, but everybody else is that's about it. I mean, Andrew Billings, Braxton Jones, Ryan Bates are free agents. They may just let all three of those guys walk. You got to replace your safeties, but that's really the only main thing that is forced upon you to change. You got about $16 million to try and replace those two safeties, and that could kind of be it for big moves in the offseason, plus, I guess, your draft picks and stuff. You could create some more salary cap space. We've talked on this podcast before about the possibility of moving on from Tremaine Edmonds after the season, and that would save you $15 million in salary cap space, but then you have to replace Tremaine Edmonds with that savings. So, you don't get all of that money back into the old bank account there. They could move on from DeAndre Swift and save about $7.5 million against the salary cap. But again, you got to replace the running back at that point with the money that you saved by moving on from him. And you could throw Cole Kmet in this conversation more like a trade candidate than someone they would just straight up release as a salary cap casualty. I would think they'd get something for him on the trade market more so than those other two guys, perhaps, just based on financials for those two. But sure, there are a couple of ways to create some more salary cap space to maybe make one splash. But from here, there isn't going to be any more of these blockbuster additions to the Bears team outside of draft picks. Yes, you could trade draft picks for a good player, but even then, you don't have a lot of salary cap space to sign, Trey Hendrickson or whoever you might trade for, right, for the future, because you're already putting a bunch of money in Dio Dangbo and Grady Jarrett and all the guys you signed this offseason and the extension for Joe Thuney and the extension for Jonah Jackson. Like, all of this is to say, this Bears team is who it's going to be. Like, there's not a lot of room to make that one more big offseason of moves. It's like, no, there's one more offseason of like trying to fine tune some stuff, but this has got to be the key players. Like, the players that are under contract now have to be the players that get them to the Super Bowl. Like, if that's the goal, right? This is going to be the group that either gets you to the Super Bowl or doesn't get you to the Super Bowl. And it's not as though there's going to be a bunch more moves that come in and actually lift this team the rest of the way. It's changing out a safety here or there, maybe changing out a linebacker, one spot here or there, plus rookies. It's kind of where your team building strategy goes from here. It makes the draft that much more important. But also it highlights the importance of, like, you better be right about the moves you've made up to this point. The Bears are counting on all of the players they've acquired now to be able to take them to that next level. Doesn't mean that they have to take them to that next level this year, right? It doesn't mean that 2025 is the only year that you're going to measure the success of those moves. No, but it's like over the next couple of seasons, this is who you're bringing to the dance. This is who you're dancing with. Let's see how well you can dance, because you're just not necessarily going to find a big time change in partners here to get you a lot farther than where the Bears are right now without trading a bunch of first round picks to try and add one more big splash player. And that's where you get into long-term team building question marks about, okay, you start giving up those draft picks and you don't have young guys developing on the bench that are cheaper and can sustain some of that success. Like, the Eagles have had so much success with really nailing all those picks on the offensive and defensive lines. So that's how they're able to support Jalen Hurts so well, despite all the money they're paying Jalen Hurts. Like, these draft picks become that much more critical as you get to this transitory stage of the team building process. For a while, all Ryan Poles was kind of doing was you're building pieces for the long term, right? We're thinking about long term. We're keeping some future flexibility and thinking long term. But now, like, Grady Jarrett's a win now player. They need him to win now, right? Joe Thuney is a win now player. They need him to win now. Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, right? These are players help you now, and not just now this year, but like the next 2 years. This is what you're really, really locked into. So this is what you got to make work. And there's some players within that mix that you're really confident in. There's some players in that mix that you're a little confident in, and there's some players in that mix that could be really big wild cards. So I want to explore this question of, like, is this core good enough, or what does it look like if they're good enough, and what does it look like if they're not? Like, what is the path to great success, or the path to some of the same disappointment we've seen the Bears go through when Ryan Pace was kind of in this stage of the process in like 2018, when you make the Khalil Mack trade and go all in on trying to maximize the time around Mitch Trubisky? You got to get those picks right.